I've got to know Philip and his work a little bit over the last few years, and while I wouldn't say I agree with everything he has said, or indeed everything he and his think tank are going to say...
You can say that again. Although the Prime Minister probably has more to worry about right now than one disappointed think tanker, Philip Blond's criticisms will be noticed and, ahead of the party conference next week, have the capacity to wound.
David Grossman. Well, Philip Blond is here, along with Sean Worth, former policy advisor to David Cameron in Downing Street, who now works at the think tank Policy Exchange. Good evening, both of you. Philip Blond, first of all, aren't you just acting like a bit of a spurned lover?
Goodness, what a thought. Not, not in the slightest. Rather, I'm acting for a vision that I believe in, and I think actually the majority of the British people believe in. And if we want a Conservative Party that speaks to the majority, that doesn't do minority politics, it has to also speak to its one nation tradition, its one nation element. And the sacrifice of that vision and of that appeal will condemn, I fear, the Conservative Party to a permanent minority.
Conservative Party a permanent minority because he didn't follow through.
Yeah, first of all, the implication here is that the government has somehow lost a sort of reforming zeal, a social vision, a social mission.
That's exactly what Philip is saying in the article.
Quite right. And I think that you know, look at the policy and look at the fronts of reform, and they are the most radical and the most wide-reaching of any since the Second World War. I mean, that's an objective fact. That's not my biased opinion. But in terms of what's popular to the voters, I think the government, you know, I look at this. I don't look at this as an issue of dropping a social agenda. I look at it as a government in mid-term. This particular period in the electoral cycle, you focus on issues like jobs and growth, because you know that
But if you throw it away, Philip Blond seems to be saying what you're doing. I mean, the expression you use is retoxifying the Tory party. That is quite a powerful point to make.
The point isn't that I disagree with Sean in the sense that some of the policies are indeed radical, and I like them to be made more radical, and there'll be tests of that. You know, if Dover does get its People's Port, brilliant. But the point is it's very clear from the outside and from the inside that the government has lost its central focus, and its central focus has to be a vision. And you organise your party and you organise your policy.
It's okay when you're in opposition, isn't it? It's okay because someone like you in opposition gives them the kind of big overarching thought. Then, you know, the reality is they've got to get the deficit down, don't they? And that's what they see as their primary concern.
What has happened, and this is the great tragedy, what has happened is means have eclipsed ends. And deficit reduction is a means, but to what end? And until the government can re-articulate and give a vision, because at the moment they're not offering any positive account of the type of world we want and the type of world we need. And the strength of Ed Miliband's speech is he did that. And the shame is that's Cameron's territory. And what I'd like is Cameron to move back and give us the vision that will give a majority.
Right, first of all, on Ed's speech, it was great. It was a brilliant speech. It was probably the best he's delivered, but it didn't have a great deal behind it. It's caused a lot of excitement, I think, from a press pack that actually wants a battle of ideas when it doesn't seem.
Yeah, well, you're not going to policy this far out, are you? You're not going to
he won't. No, but this is my point about where the different parties are at this period in the parliamentary cycle. Ed needs to communicate vision. Cameron needs to look at what are voters saying right now is their top priority, and the government in the toughest period has to focus on those things.
I think, unfortunately, that's completely wrong. The great shame is that Number 10 has lost its policy vision. It's surrendered it to departments. The Treasury is more powerful than Number 10.
You believe that he's in hock to George Osborne?
Well, I don't think he's in hock. He's just essentially surrendered policy initiative to the Treasury. And what has happened is, I think that what they like is a cacophony of voices in Number 10, many different versions. But the point is you can't govern like that. Successful governments need clear principle, and they need to ensure that every part of government follows that principle, but there is no clear principle at the moment. What type of Conservative is David Cameron? We need to hear that, and we need it to be a conservatism that
There's
actually...
not a red Tory.
Well, he needs to be a red Tory if he wants to win a majority.
Well, I think if it's a question about what do people want, I don't think the big society was kind of top of the list. I mean, let's be frank. I'm not opposed to the big society. I agree with the vision of changing the nature of the state. Right, and I think that actually towards the election there will need to be a stronger focus on the social. And
But
what I would say is that there are really important reform agendas, as I mentioned earlier. They probably do need to be turbocharged a bit, actually, and that's some of the work I'm doing at Policy Exchange. But that doesn't mean you've lost sight of any sort of social vision.
Look, I think everybody, both internally and externally, as you well know, Sean, thinks the government has lost its way. And it's lost its way because we don't have a defining vision from the centre that then can structure the rest of policy and the rest of departments, because it's not clear what sort of conservatism we have. Is it 1980s austerity? Is it 21st century vision?
Voters don't ask what kind of conservative are you. Are you Benjamin Disraeli or are you Big Society? They say, do you share my values? Are you focusing on the things that I care about, which is jobs, the economy, schools and
which Philip Blond says, and that's
well, we have to, because the trouble is conservatism is now actually creating economically class and caste in an incredible way. The type of free market economics we're following is concentrating power, creating monopolies and cartels. Let's have a radical conservatism that distributes power and property to all, and that's what the Prime Minister needs to convey.
Thank you both very much indeed. In the early